think it's important that we recognize that we're holding chairs for the ones who aren't here. We do have Memorial Day, but I think it's important that we recognize that they're gone but not forgotten for various reasons. Veterans Day, really to me it's about service. And as veterans and military members, you know, we serve, but what's underneath that? And where does Veterans Day come from? And what's the history behind it? I think it's important that we remember where our history comes from and the underlying meaning of the things that we do, and not just get caught up in, you know, the daily life that we have, the rigmarole and, you know, the commercialization of holidays and things like that, even somber ones. So Veterans Day was really all Veterans Day. And all Veterans Day came from Armistice Day, and in other parts of the world, it's actually Armistice Day, and it goes by various names in different countries, but it actually comes from World War I. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the battlefield ended, and they started to sign their treaties and the ceasefires, and over the course of the next months, they eventually ended up with the Treaty of Versailles, and the war was officially over. But World War I is often overshadowed by World War II. It was a horrific conflict, and it was many, many millions of soldiers that died, and many millions of civilian casualties that were killed as a direct result of the war. And so in other parts of the world, that, for example, France themselves as a country lost over 1 million soldiers. That's an entire generation of people gone. Now, like I said, we had Armistice Day, and then it became All Veterans Day, and that was during World War II times. Now, since then, the US has just adopted Veterans Day, and we have Memorial Day to remember those who are fallen specifically. But Veterans Day did come from that. And Memorial Day has been around actually much earlier than Veterans Day. It's a much older Remembrance Day. So with that history in mind, and realizing where we come from, and the fact that Veterans Day and Armistice Day ties us together to our friendly nations around the globe through history, what does it mean today? What does it mean to me? Well, first, by being a veteran, you're tied to the people who are also veterans. Through different branches, through different conflicts, different eras of service, we have a connection, each of us together, that can never be broken. And that is nationwide and worldwide. Wherever you go, if you meet a veteran, you have a connection with them. And that harkens to America's core values and principles for me, where we may not agree on politics, we may not be on the same social class level, we may come from all different parts of the world, but there are things that join us together, and common service is one of those values, and one of those things that joins us together. It's very powerful. So today, really my thought is, what does service mean now? None of us are active duty anymore, and you folks that have attended here today are not veterans or are not, you know, actively serving. And but the concept of service is not just for service members. It's not just for military. Now, we all serve, not just in the armed forces, but we're serving each other. We're serving a higher purpose of sorts. We're serving some faculty of the community. Now, service can be one of two things. It can be service to yourself, or it can be selfless service. Now, I would ask, how are you serving? Just like I say that we're all leaders, but some of us are just not leading with a great example sometimes. We're all leading. People are always looking up to you. And we're all serving in some fashion. It doesn't have to be the military. So some people serve as firefighters. Some people serve as our public servants, as our police officers. Some people serve as nurses. You know, even something like an accountant. He's serving his customers. humanity is based in service. We are drawn together as communities and households and families through service. Through acts of service, that is how we affect the people around us. If we choose to serve ourselves, well, you can imagine that might distance you from the people around you. But if you focus on serving others, you're drawn closer to people who have common goals and common interests. You're drawn closer to your family. You're drawn closer to your community. So for me, Veterans Day is really the question now: how do I continue to serve in a way that's meaningful now that I'm no longer an active part of our armed forces? And I think that military members in general find a multitude of ways to continue that idea of service and to continue to serve their communities. Because I've never met a veteran who served and signed up on the dotted line and possibly put themselves in harm's way all the way to the final sacrifice, and then just got out and said, I'm going to be a hermit and I'm going to withdraw from the world and I don't want to serve my country anymore. I don't know very many people who lose their sense of patriotism and who lose their sense of service after signing up for that. So how do we serve? Well, like I said, we can serve in a variety of ways. It can be overt service of a nurse, a doctor, a firefighter, or it can be that community sense. And so it becomes a question of perspective. I plow snow, I work for the town. And the daily grind can be hard to see the acts of service in something like that, in whatever jobs that you do, in whatever daily responsibilities you have. It's very easy to lose the perspective that we're getting the opportunity to serve others around us, their communities. So having these days, having Veterans Day, having Memorial Day, I think it's very important because it continues to keep the perspective alive inside us that we can continue to serve and that our service isn't just for us. My time in the Coast Guard, it was great. I had a fun time, learned a lot, got to travel a little bit. But ultimately, the lessons I learned and the skills I acquired, it's up to me to put those to use for the good of other people now. The time spent in service wasn't about me. It's about how I can affect other people. And I think that most of our veterans would echo that. We take the time and the things that we learn and our experiences, and then we apply them to the world around us. And hopefully we have an impact. And hopefully the world around us is better for our impact. I don't know one person who signed up for the military thinking they were going to go make the world a worse place, that didn't believe in great underlying core values of freedom and equality for all, and service, selfless service and sacrifice. So I just really want to thank the other veterans that are here. I want to thank the community that came out to support us. And I want you to think about, how are you serving? Where you can continue to serve? And is it a selfish service, or is it a selfless service? Because when you're having hard times and you're upset about something's not going your way, everything seems like it's crashing in, that's probably a self-centered mindset that you have. Your perspective is probably a negative self-serving, and the reason you're having a problem is because something's not going your way. That doesn't mean there aren't problems that come up, but if we can shift our perspective, we might say, you know what, things aren't going right, or I'm having a problem, but there's a lesson that can be learned here, and I can take this and I can use this to better help somebody else. And when they go through what I'm going through, I can help them with that. So that's really what I wanted to say today. I appreciate you coming, and thank you for having me.